Begin here with 2.8, the last section of chapter 2. We talk about operations with functions. We talk about addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, and what's called composition. So addition is known as what's called the sum function. Subtraction is known as what's called the difference function. Multiplication is known as the product of the two functions. And then the division is known as the quotient function. The composition, or what's called the fog function, is known as the composition function. So essentially, the symbol means adding two functions, subtracting two functions, multiplying two functions, and dividing two functions, just like this thing says. I'm going to show you how to do it momentarily with numbers, and then I'll do one example at the end with no numbers. The fog function, it's weird because the second function g is what you're going to do first to the x. So you're going to do the inside part first and then plug it back into the outside second. And I'll show you how to do all that momentarily. So I set up a couple of examples here, perform the indicated operations, and simplify. And so in the first one, it says f plus g of negative 1. That would be the same thing as f of negative 1 plus g of negative 1. So it basically says, remember, these numbers go into this function. So we're going to plug in negative 1 in for the x's in both functions. I'm going to do it separately because it's probably easier. So f of negative 1 first, which is this value, means negative 1 here and here for x. So 3 times negative 1 squared minus 2 times negative 1 plus 1. So negative 1 squared is positive 1. Positive 1 times 3 is 3. Negative 2 times negative 1 is a positive 2. So 3 plus 2 plus 1 is 6. So that's f of negative 1. G of negative 1 is negative 1 plus 2. G in here, x value replaced with negative 1. So g of negative 1 is positive 1. So now that we have these two answers, which is this, it wants us to add them. So basically you're going to take 6 plus 1, and 7 is your final answer. And that's really what you're doing. So you're really plugging in essentially negative 1 into each function, and then adding the answers. Letter B would be about the same thing, except you're going to subtract the answers. This says f minus g of 2. So it's f of 2 minus g of 2, as it says over here. Oh, sorry, as it says up here. So doing it separately here, f of 2 into the f function would be 3 times 2 squared minus 2 times 2 plus 1. 2 squared is 4, times 3 is 12. 2 times 2 is 4, plus 1. 12 minus 4 is 8, plus 1 is 9. G of 2 would be 2 plus 2. So that was 4. So once we have these two answers, this thing says subtract them. So 9 minus 4, your final answer is 5. And that's pretty much how we're going to continue on here. So just should be able to kind of go through this pretty good here. The third one is multiplication. So we're going to multiply f of 1 times g of 1. So again, f of 1 would be 3 times 1 squared. Again, using the same two functions. Minus 2 times 1 plus 1. 1 squared is 1 times 3 is 3. 2 times 1 is 2. So 3 minus 2 is 1. 1 plus 1 is 2. G of 1 is 1 plus 1. Excuse me, 1 plus 2. 1 plus 2. So that's 3. So now this thing says take 2 and multiply it by 3, and you get 6. This is the product. And the fourth one says divide f of 3 divided by g of 3. So f of 3 would be 3 times 3 squared minus 2 times 3 plus 1 g of 3 would be 3 plus 2. So if I'm out of space here, 3 squared is 9, times 3 is 27. This is minus 6, which is 27 minus 6 is 21, plus 1 is 22. The bottom 3 plus 2 is 5. 22 divided by 5, it doesn't really simplify. Or if you wanted to, you could say it's really just 4, with a remainder of 2 out of 5. Really, this one's better, the fraction, if you can't divide further. And now the fog function. This is f on the outside, g of negative 4 on the inside. So what we're going to do with this is we're going to plug in negative 4 into the g function first inside. So negative 4 plugged into the g function, that's negative 4 plus 2. That comes out to a negative 2. Then we're going to take this answer and plug it into the outer answer. So this becomes, or let me do it over here. Now we're looking at f of negative 2. So we're not going to plug in negative 4 into the f function. We're going to plug negative 4 into the g function. The g function pops up negative 2, and we're going to plug that into the outer function f. So f function is this thing. So this becomes 3 times negative 2 squared minus 2 times negative 2 plus 1. This would be 12. If negative 2 squared is 4, times 3 is 12. Negative 2 times 2 is a positive 4, so that's 16, plus 1 is 17. 17 is the final answer. That's your guy. So we take the number here, plug it into negative 4, plops out negative 2, then that goes into the outer function. To explain a little bit better, let's look at the last one here in this example. This one says, take negative 4 and put it into the f function. Now the f function is 3x squared minus 2x plus 1. So now we're going to put in an x as negative 4 into this function here. This giving 16, negative 4 squared, times 3 is 48. Negative 2 times negative 4 is positive 8. 48 plus 8 is 56. Plus 1 is 57. So now we're going to take the g and put 57 into the g. Again, this becomes 57. So we're going to put that into the g function. So now g of 57 becomes 57 plus 2, which is 59. Again, the composition function really is plug a number into one and then that answers to another. So that's like putting one instead of the other. Kind of weird, but let's do another one. Okay. Number 3 here has fog of 5. So this one says f on the outside, g on the inside. I'll put the 5 into the g function first. Sorry about that. My g function is x minus 2. I'm going to put a 5 here. So 5 minus 2 is 3. Then I'm going to take that answer and I'm going to put it into the g function. That's essentially how this works. So f of 3 would be the square root of 3 plus 1, which is the square root of 4, or just 2. 2 would be the final answer here. Part B says g of f of x, but this x is 0, so g of f of 0. The previous was fog of 5. This is gof of 5. So 0 into the f function. The f function is a square root function, x plus 1, but now 0 plus 1. So the square root of 1 is 1. So now we're going to take that answer, and we're going to put it into the g function, which is here. 1 minus 2, the answer is negative 1. That is your final answer. Weird, but that's the way composition works. This one, addition, sum, f of 15 plus g of 15. F of 15 would be the square root of 15 plus 1, square root of 16, which is 4. G of 15 is 15 minus 2, which is 13. So this is 4, little arrow, and this one is 13. So 4 plus 13 is 17. 17 is the sum. D, this is f of 8 times g of 8. Plugging 8 into the f function is the square root of 8 plus 1, which is the square root of 9, which is just 3. G of 8 is 8 minus 2, or 6. So this becomes 3 times 6. 3 times 6 is 18. 18 is your answer. And then part E here says take f of 3 and divide it by g of 3. Now again, f of 3 would be the square root of 3 plus 1. G of 3 would be 3 minus 2. The top would be the square root of 4. The bottom is 1. Anything divided by 1 is itself. The square root of 4 is 2. 2 is the final answer. 2 over 1. And then now finally here, look at a few examples where you take away the numbers. Now I don't think this part's in the My Math Lab. I'm going to put a little star here. But I thought you should know how to do it. So if you're talking about f plus g of x, it's just straight up x. What this is saying is instead of plugging in numbers, this is just a whole function plus the whole function. So this would be 2x plus 1 plus 3x minus 2. So normally you put parentheses around each function, but addition doesn't do anything differently if there's no parentheses. So you just combine like terms. 2x plus 3x is 5x. 1 minus 2 is negative 1. This function would be the sum function. That's all it's saying. In other words, combine like terms. B would be minus. So we're going to take, in this case, 2x plus 1 minus 3x minus 2. In this case, I have to put a parentheses because of the minus here. This minus has to be distributed to the guy on the right. So this is 2x plus 1 minus 3x plus 2. So 2x minus 3x would be negative 1x, or just negative x. 1 plus 2 is 3. So negative x plus 3 would be the difference function. That's all it says. And then now, product, exactly what it says. You actually multiply the two things. So in the parentheses to show multiplication. So I'm going to take the two functions in terms of their equations or their expressions. What you would say FOIL. Distribute. So 2x times 3x is 6x squared. 2x times negative 2 is, negative 4x. 1 times 3x is positive 3x. And then 1 times negative 2 is negative 2. These two combine to be a negative 1x. (6x squared) and negative 2 don't have a partner. So that's essentially your product function. That's all it is. And then now, if you will, the quotient, you actually divide the whole thing. So the top is f of x, 2x plus 1. The bottom is 3x minus 2. This is what we call a rational function. And we haven't really been taught how to divide x's by x's. So this might be this is something that we're going to talk about next chapter, to a certain point, to a certain extent. What's called division. I'll show you mostly synthetic division, but I'll show you a little bit of long division next time, or later on in chapter 3. Don't worry about this too much. You can't really cancel or anything out. You can't really divide it with the knowledge that we have right now. So that's your answer. And now, straight up fog of x. Again, in the previous one, this would be a number plugged into the g, and the number pops out and then back to the f function. But in essence, there is no number, so it wants g of x to go inside of f of x. So in essence, it wants this thing to be the x in the f function. So this, the f function would be 2 times x plus 1. But now, instead of putting a number, it's the whole g function. So fog of x really is g plugged into f. That's what it is. So I'm super happy with that answer. If you want to go further, which most textbooks do, I believe, you simplify, and you get 6x minus 3. I'll put a little asterisk around both because they're both correct. And now golf of x, g on the outside, f of x on the inside. So this one's about the same, except you want the f equation to be the input of the g equation. So you're going to go the other way now. You want to put it in here as opposed to in here. So the g function is 3 times x minus 2, except now the input is the f function. So 2x plus 1 becomes the new x in the g function. You want to go further, you distribute, and you get 6x plus 2. Notice that these two are not exactly the same. So fog and goff are essentially not the same answer. They're different. So this concludes chapter 2.